Mr. Granoff, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
How was your visit in Albania?
Well, I joke that I come here for a vacation, and it's kind of a strange vacation when you have 8 or 10 meetings a day, meeting with people and helping the projects that we're working on. So quite an exciting time.
What kind of vacation those are?
It's a funny vacation, but it's quite a rewarding one to see all the progress we've made.
Is Albania funny, or is your agenda here funny?
The reality is that we do a lot of important things here. We have a lot that we need to accomplish, and one of the purposes of my being here and the board being here, to be honest with you, Blendy, is to be kind of a catalyst, to be catalytic. That our showing up here creates some deadlines, that people think, well, we better make sure we're getting things done, that we can deal with problems.
You come every year here, or even twice a year?
Twice a year, when I can.
It's a kind of obligation, let's say, to be here. And
my own obligation, anyway.
Yes, your own obligation. May I ask you, when you visited for the first time Albania?
1995, so a long time ago.
1995.
When did you start your this program?
1997.
So about the same time.
But I was a journalist also at that time, 1995. And how was the first impression of an American landing in Albania in 1995 with this small airport?
Yeah, well, I remember the airport really well. And I can tell you that my impression was in some ways two very contradictory things. On the one hand, when I landed, I was aware of how primitive everything was. You're right, I landed in the airport. There were cobblestones at the end of the runway.
It was a forgotten corner of the world.
It was.
Nothing to do with technology, with the modernization.
Exactly right. And then I had my first meetings with people, and I didn't know what to expect. And I was very, very surprised by the warmth and welcome that we received. I didn't know what to expect. People were very grateful for what we were doing to help. They were very welcoming of Americans. I had been involved in foreign assistance programs when I worked in the Congress a long time ago, and not every country welcomed Americans in the same way. And so I was struck by these two contrasts, both the country that was still quite primitive, you didn't see many cars on the street, and at the same time by this warmth and curiosity and welcoming of people.
But the people you met at the time, they were updated with the modernism, let's say, with the modern world?
You know, I don't think they necessarily were. They were people who wanted to be updated with the modernities of the world. That's definitely true. But the country, it was 1995, and things had not been open for very long.
And I'm sure that in the last visit or in the visit previous, you have seen a totally different Albania.
Completely different.
Completely different. Even the people who visited Albania in the beginning of the 90s and they return now, they couldn't know, knew nothing about.
They couldn't. And to be honest with you,
recognize nothing. Yes.
Sometimes it's very helpful when we live in the moment. We think, these problems, we have these big problems, nothing changes. If you look at what's happened to Albania since I started coming, since you started doing your program, obviously there have been immense change. And we've been able to, in some ways, live together through that history, which is quite a unique experience that not many of us get.
But there are too many people saying that, okay, we have a different country, more developed country, but not going in the right way. That's let's say, some people say, maybe the things could be done much better and much in the right way. Are you agree with that?
I do agree with it, and I'll tell you, one of the things that gets often measured in the United States is people poll and say, are we headed in the right direction or the wrong direction? And a very significant percentage of people think that we're headed in the wrong direction. And this, I think, is true not just in the United States and not just in Albania, but is true across the world and society today, that people are concerned about the direction of things, that maybe we are not headed in the right direction. They're unhappy about the direction. They don't have faith in institutions to be able to deliver to them. And this is a problem facing Albania, it's a problem facing the United States, and it's a problem facing the world.
Every country. How you were involved in Albania at that time, in 1995?
So at the end of communism, the United States was thinking about how to help the post-communist Eastern European countries to develop a private sector economy. And they decided that maybe the best thing to do was to help those countries develop their economies themselves. And so the United States created what were, in effect, private equity funds for many of those countries, but they tried to do it in a different way. So what they agreed to do was that the President of the United States would appoint the board of these funds.
It was Bill Clinton at the time,
Bill
or
Clinton at
still
the time.
George Bush?
In my case, it was Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton, yes.
The first fund was created in Poland by the first President Bush.
Bush, yes.
The Albania Fund was created by President Clinton.
Something like $30 million.
$30 million.
$30 million.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Led by Domenico Scaglione at the time.
Dominic was the first chairman, and the idea was that we would have pretty much complete freedom to try to invest in things to promote private sector development, and we, as long as we lived within certain guidelines.
To work like a private enterprise and to have success in the economy of this country.
And the reason was,
yes,
we thought that one of the most important things that we could do was to prove that you could be successful economically here in an honest and transparent way. And if we could demonstrate that, in a way, capitalism could work in Albania, that model would be probably more powerful in helping Albania develop its economy than, for example, giving it money in foreign aid.
Yes, absolutely. And you started in Albania with 30 million federal funds from the United States government.
$30 million from the taxpayer.
$30 million. And how much are now?
If you add up everything that we've done over time, it's about $300 million in total.
$300 million in 30 years.
And we gave, and a bunch of years ago, we gave half of the original $30 million back to the United States government.
You have to do also with the other half?
We did. So the deal that we made was, the deal that was made for all of these funds, yes, was to give back half of the original grant, so in our case, 15 million out of the 30, developed. And then we agreed that we could keep half plus all of the profits and create a foundation which would be perpetual in the country to try to promote those private sector development goals that the fund was trying to promote.
If I am a citizen in the street and I want to ask you, what are the most important projects where Albanian-American Fund has been involved?
Well, if you're an Albanian citizen, it's probably hard for you to not have been touched by what we do. So if you go to the airport, it turns out that we helped build Mother Teresa Airport. If you go to a bank and have an ATM card...
You are still in the airport?
We are not. We're basically almost only in the giving money away, yes, side of things now. So during the time of the fund, so if you go to the airport, we helped build the airport. If you have an ATM card, our bank revolutionized banking in this country. If you, today, if you have an ID card or a passport, the company that we created provides those ID cards and passports.
You have been always present in those companies?
From
the beginning?
We started those companies.
You started those companies?
Yeah.
In fact, now, one of the biggest discussions in the beginning of September, or the end of August, has been your participation in the Butrinti, let's say, management fund. Why you participate in Butrinti, and what is the philosophy you will use there?
So it's important to distinguish between what the fund was doing, which is to try to invest in profitable companies, and what we did with the profits.
Yes.
100% of the profits of the fund went into this foundation. All of what the foundation does is it gives away money. That's all we do. Philanthropy, sustainable philanthropy.
Yes.
One of the 4 areas that the foundation concentrates on is cultural heritage.
Yes.
Obviously,
which is very important for Albania and not very well managed.
For sure, yes, for sure. And obviously, Butrint is one of the most important cultural sites around. And so we, very early on, we identified Butrint. We learned about it from my friendship with Lord Rothschild.
Yes.
That there was a way for us to help preserve Butrint in a very transparent kind of way. And so what we did is we tried to bring a management plan to Butrint, which is required under UNESCO rules, and we were prepared to give...
Has been discussed with UNESCO?
Oh, absolutely.
First,
absolutely.
Before
we discussed it with them all along, and we are going to contribute $6 million to help develop Butrint, but we wanted to be sure that that money was going to be spent wisely. And I'll just give you an example.
In what way? Yes.
A couple of years ago, we installed ticket machines electronic ticketing machines in Butrint.
Butrint, yes.
Right, which you probably know about.
Yes.
Within a year, the revenues of Butrint doubled or tripled. Now, do you think
This
that
is
2
normal
or 3...
because before the people put the money in their pockets and
Exactly. So do you think 2 or 3 times as many people came to Butrint? Of course not. What happened is that because we created that transparency with those ticket machines, that revenue, instead of being siphoned off in a corrupt way, was able to be used for the benefit of Butrint. And this is really probably the best example of what we want to accomplish.
But will be direct the fund on the management of Butrint or will be through the board?
We do not manage Butrint. Let's be clear. Yes. We do not own Butrint. We do not manage Butrint. We do not rent Butrint. Butrint is a cultural asset of the country of Albania. The management of Butrint ultimately is managed by the government of Albania.
There have been 2 discussions about this project. First of all, if inside of the Butrint will be buildings, hotels, or something like that, and here the people are very sensitive. And the second one is the presence in the board of Richard Hodges, who has created a lot of debates, but always the debates in the side of the historians.
So I can tell you that in the park, in the area of Butrint that we control, which you can see a picture
yes.
of, absolutely there will be no commercial development.
No
the
commercial
only thing that
yes.
we're building in Butrint is a visitor center
yes,
for tourists to come to in this way, and we're going to have an architectural competition to do that. But your picture shows me an interesting thing. So you see the tower in the middle?
Yes.
This is called the Venetian Tower.
Yes.
Okay, and it was built by the Venetians probably in the 15th century.
Yes.
We had somebody, a politician in this country, accuse me that we were building a new tower in Butrint, the Venetian Tower.
Except this one?
Yeah. Thinking that, oh yeah, this is going to be a hotel, a tower.
I'm not talking about the accusers, I'm talking about the real discussions where, because there are many people afraid of the new investments in Butrint, and that's right.
And what I'm telling you, what I'm telling you is not only will there be no commercial development like that, but people are speaking without doing their homework. People are speaking in a way that is irresponsible. And people looking at that tower and thinking that that's going to be a Holiday Inn in Butrint, I think they're not serving Albanians. They're not serving the project, and this is a really important project.
Repeating another time, you have everything discussed with UNESCO, who has the protection of Butrint, let's say, as a UNESCO heritage site.
In order to qualify to be a UNESCO World Heritage Site, you have to meet a certain set of criteria. Yes. And Butrint is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and we meet that criteria. In fact, UNESCO has looked at the management plan that we have. We're doing one of the things we try to do is to bring new models of management.
What will change in Butrint after your management?
Butrint will be open to more people. Butrint will be more transparent. Butrint will be less corrupt. The treasures of Butrint will be better protected. More people will be able to visit it in a safe way, and it will be a more developed gem
for the people. To be clear, we are talking about big buildings, not let's say a service area. Because in Butrint, you couldn't buy a bottle of water after 2 hours walking on the sun.
Correct.
You don't have any possibility to have a short coffee, maybe with a plastic cup or something like that, a paper cup.
You're right.
We need something like that in any touristic place you have. We are talking about big buildings, hotels, and something like those structures.
We're not talking about commercial buildings. But when you talk about services like a visitor center, if you want
toilets and something.
Exactly. When you go visit the Colosseum, if you go visit some site in Greece, of course, you need the basics. You're right. You need toilets, you need sanitary facilities, you need water, you need to be able to provide for if we want people to come and visit Butrint, and which we do we need to provide basic services for them when they come? Of course we do. But that's not the same as commercial development.
No,
these are
we
very
talking
different
things. Ways. I understand very well the services which are necessary. And the second project, which was made public lately, it is the project of the Amphitheater of Durrës. Is one of the most important cultural heritage we have, but it's totally underestimated and without any, let's say, care about that. What is your project on Butrint?
So, you know, it's interesting. Our approach to what is going on in Durrës came for two reasons. One is after the earthquake, which affected Durrës, as you know, in a quite significant way, we looked around and saw what was a way in which the foundation could be helpful in rebuilding after the earthquake. And obviously, Durrës was hit significantly.
Yes.
And then we looked at what you can see at the archaeological area,
yes,
and thought that maybe what we could do is to help develop that part of Durrës to enable more people to come and visit, to protect the site, develop the site, and in a very similar way, we wanted to make sure that it got managed in a transparent, non-corrupt, open kind of way so that people could develop.
But compared to Butrint, which is already done, let's say, in Durrës, you have to do a lot of works because the new project needs to open the other area of the amphitheater. Only half of the amphitheater is present now. There are houses who will be destroyed there to open the space for the...
Right.
Do you have a concrete plan on that way?
Completely.
Completely.
And we would be, if we didn't have...
How does it cost
If we didn't have a plan, it would be irresponsible for us to proceed. But right now, at the early stage of it, we're only doing the preparations for that plan, right? So we are spending the money to prepare all of the details that need to be done.
Projects and everything,
And then we know. So for example, if you think about the cost, right?
Yes.
We live in a world right now where everybody talks about supply chain problems,
yes,
inflation, as you know.
Yeah.
The price of everything has gone up. The price of stones, the price of pipes, the price of everything.
The price changed every day, mostly, yes.
And of course, and as we begin to get close to implementing this project, we have to have a good sense, because we're very careful about the cost structure, of, okay, here's what we want to do, here's how much it's going to cost, here's how much we're willing to commit. And remember, the foundation, we get no either individual or institutional economic benefit. We are in the business of giving away money and giving away money in a responsible way.
When you'll be ready for the amphitheater of Durrës?
That's a harder question. I think it will take a couple of years for sure before it gets fully developed. These things will take some time.
Will be only amphitheater or also the surround area?
It involves all of it. So it involves the amphitheater itself and also the surrounding area coming up to it on actually, I think, on at least 3 sides.
You have participated also in the reconstruction of the most important old part of Vlora.
Yes.
Where also you want to build or to participate in the Jewish Museum.
Yes.
What is the idea of this Jewish Museum?
Well, you know, there are often parts of history of countries that people are embarrassed about, and there aren't too many examples of history where countries can really be proud of what they've done. And the history of Albania dealing with the Jewish people turns out to be one of those things that is quite unusual that Albanians can be very proud of. And as you know, Albania was the only country to end World War II with more Jewish people than it began with. It hid Jews.
Is this one here? Huh?
So it acted, according to BESA, Albanians acted to protect Jews at a time when they weren't being protected anywhere else. This history is a really interesting history and one that Albanians should learn about and one that Albanians should be proud of. It turns out that a lot of the Jewish population of Albania happened to live in Vlora.
Yes.
And so we thought
the biggest community we had in history.
Exactly. And so what we thought was, since we had already developed part of Vlora as a business improvement district, which you know we've done in Shkodra, in Korça, in Kruja, in the Bazari Ri, yes, in downtown Tirana, that maybe this would be a good place to locate a Jewish museum to educate people about
history for the foreigners, because the Albanians know very well that story. No any Jewish, it was lived in the hands of the Germans during the Second World War.
Exactly. And even the truth is that when we think about history, you and I may know about it. It's something important to teach our children, that our children know what their history is, and something to be quite proud of, I think.
And what will be your role in the Marubi Museum? It is a very, very important heritage of Albania.
So, as you know, the Marubi Museum contains probably, I think, the largest collection of historical photographs of Albania that exists in the world.
Absolutely.
And as you know, photographs deteriorate over time. So this is an asset that you can't just leave in a storage facility. You know, you have to protect it. And so what we did with regard to the Marubi Museum is came in and we provided some money in a plan so that we would pay to preserve all of those photographs, to make sure that they were safe, and also to create a space so that people could see them in a rotating kind of exhibit for the benefit of both of tourists coming, but also for the benefit of Albanians, again, learning more about their culture, learning more about their history.
Those are the projects mostly with philanthropy and the participation of the heritage of cultural heritage of Albania. What are your biggest projects on the way in Albania, economical projects?
So remember that the entire business of the foundation is giving away money.
Yes.
And giving away money in a responsible way, so that in a transparent way, so that we can create the effort that we want. And we work in 4 different areas. So we work in education, and so as you may know, one of our biggest projects is Tumo and the Pyramid.
Pyramid, yes.
Yeah, and I was there just yesterday to look at the progress that we're making. Tumo is an interesting example because we look around the world for where the best models, management models are. And so, for example, what we're doing in Butrent or what we're doing in Durrës is not different from what we're doing in education. And what we found was that the most successful digital education program for kids didn't come from the United States, didn't come from Europe, came from Armenia. That's where Tumo comes from, Armenia. And so what we did is we went to Armenia, we talked with those people, we brought that program to Albania, and then we worked with the government and thought, gee, wouldn't it be interesting to put this program in the pyramid, which obviously began, as a place to honor Enver Hoxha, and now could be a place to look at the future of the country. But we didn't want to wait until the pyramid could be reconstructed because, as you know, construction projects take a while.
Yes.
So we located the program actually underneath part of the stadium, and today, over 1,200 kids a week
1,200 kids a
week are going through our programs after school where they learn about robotics, animation, music, electronic music, all kinds of ways of using new technology. Now, ultimately, when we can use the pyramid, move into the pyramid, which I hope we can do next year, we'll be able to accommodate 2,500 kids a week. Now, I can tell you that also of that, half of the kids in our program right now are getting a scholarship. So that is, nobody is denied their being able to access the program because of the need. It's available to anybody, regardless of their circumstances, and half of the kids now are getting a scholarship. Now, in the end, it's much more than about the pyramid, because at the end, the goal of the program has to be that kids all across the country can have access to this kind of education, and ultimately, that's our goal. Very important, exactly.
Have you participated in the tourism projects? Tourism is the future of this country, according to my opinion. It's very important for us.
Well, remember, so think about it. We've created new tourism investment district or business investment projects in Kryetarit, in Korça, in Shkodra, in the Bazari in Tirana. Almost any tourist who is coming to Albania now is visiting one of our sites. We are creating new touristic sites all the time. And I can tell you that, so yesterday, I climbed in the rain to the top of the pyramid, okay? And I think that once this project is done, tourists are gonna wanna come and climb to the top of the pyramid to see the panorama 360 degrees that they can see. So in some ways, every day the projects that we're working on will create new touristic sites for people to come to.
And the future projects?
So these are, if we think about our future projects, the way, Blenny, to think about them is really in two ways, in a horizontal way and in a vertical way. The horizontal way is that we want to create, for example, in education and technology, a suite of products that begins with kids as early as the first grade and goes all the way to coding academies where young adults who want to change their careers can learn how to code and do technology and get jobs in technology industries. And so that we have an entire suite of products horizontally in those kinds of areas. The second thing we need to do is to expand vertically. And what that means is a little bit what we talked about before, which is how can we take our programs and scale them? How can we take a program that we know can work in one place and be able to offer it across the country? Because in the end, the development of this country is going to depend not just on the development of the Tirana area, but it's going to depend on the development of the north of this country, the development of the south of this country. Now, it turns out that you can't just flip a switch and go from having one space to having 100 spaces.
Yes.
So this challenge of scaling is one that is a significant challenge, and one, if you think about our future, if we're going to be successful, that's what we need to do in order to do that. That's going to take a lot of planning. Yes. It's going to take a lot of money. One of the things that's also changing, I'll be honest with you, is that we now have other international entities that are interested in working with us because they know that we can execute. So now we have the World Bank coming to us. We have the British government wanting to do projects with us. We have the EU
because
people.
we are trusted local partners now after 30 years, almost 30 years.
Because, you know, in some ways, Blendy, we are not in the business of having good intentions. Lots of people have good intentions. We're in the execution business. And the reason people want to do things with us is because we deliver, because we can execute. And in the end, that's what matters.
That's mean, Mr. Granoff, you are very satisfied with the work of this fund in last 27, 30 years.
You know, I think we've had an opportunity starting from nothing to make a significant difference in the country. And I think people have felt it. Albanians have felt it in many ways. But I think the most important thing is that, if anything, we are maybe at the end of the beginning. That is because we've been able to be successful so far, I think it means that the responsibility that we have, maybe the opportunity that we have going forward is even larger. Obviously, we know that this country faces lots of challenges. People feel it in the street. People feel it everywhere. And it's not to suggest that we can, you know, we're a small foundation. Can we solve the problems of the country? No, of course we can't solve the problems of the country. But what we can do is make a positive contribution to trying to deal with these problems over time. And we have a lot of potential to do it. And we should. And it's an example of what, in a concrete way, I think, when people look at the relationship between the United States and Albania, what does this relationship mean, right? Here's an example of something that is an example of the partnership between the United States and Albania that is pretty unique. I don't think there's another fund and foundation anywhere in the world that functions together with the country the way that we have.
In that way. I want to ask you also something about the general view of the economics and geopolitics. The war on Ukraine has changed a lot, the economy, the partnership, also the rules of the business in the world, not only the politics. How difficult will be for Europe especially, and I'm not talking about the United States, the problem of energy? Oil and energy, but energy seems to be more difficult at the moment.
Clearly, and I think that we probably all thought that the time when we were going to have a land war in Europe was behind us. The last time we had a major land war in Europe, neither of us was born.
Nice.
This situation has created a change that ripples through many, many aspects of both geopolitics and energy.
Yes.
The fact
all
that
the philosophy of United Nations and everything.
There's very little that hasn't been changed. It's easier to identify those things than so many things have changed. One of them obviously is energy, And that was created by the fact that Europe was highly dependent on Russian energy, and now it can't be. And that has caused a ripple effect, one, through the global energy market,
Yes.
Energy less available in all kinds of different ways, but obviously it affects Europe to a much higher degree than, for example, it affects the United States, because Europe was getting more of its energy, especially gas,
From
Russia.
from Russia.
Exactly, exactly.
But how Albania will be touched from this crisis?
Well, first you have to say
We are
no
not
one...
dependent direct from the Russian gas, but we are here in the middle of the, let's say, of the problem.
You are, and the reality is that the price of energy is an international price. And so we are paying, Albanians are going to pay more for energy because everybody's paying more for energy. Listen, the United States, we don't import any gas from Russia too, but our prices of gasoline for cars is higher today than it was a while ago.
All prices are going up and up at the moment. It
They
is the war, maybe it is the instability, something happened, but the prices are going up and up. Can affect this crisis in general, let's say the normal increasing of the economy, world economy?
Let me just go back to your point about energy for a minute, because I think that, sometimes there are opportunities in crises. And I think that Albania, there's a possibility that Albania over time could become a regional hub for energy.
In what way?
Albania has a lot of hydroelectric power.
Yes.
You have people searching for energy off the
But it
coast of
depends on
Albania.
rain.
And it may, well, it's rained every day I've been
Yes.
here. So there's more power today than when I showed up a few days ago. It may be that, that people searching for energy, I know off the coast of Albania, will find it. Albania, the TAP pipeline runs through Albania. So I think that there's a possibility that Albania isn't just sort of a victim of what happens, but it may be able to play a constructive role, a positive role. Maybe it becomes a regional energy hub. And so if I were in the government, or I were thinking about this, I would be thinking about the challenges of it, but I would also be thinking about the opportunities. And I think there are opportunities in energy for Albania.
And for United States also will be a difficult time economically?
We are all tied together, whether we like it or not.
connected.
And clearly, the United States is now experiencing a difficult economic time. The interest rates are rising, prices are rising, inflation has risen, and we are now dealing with a very different macroeconomy than we were dealing with a couple of years ago. And it will affect everybody, and we have to figure out how to safely navigate our time through this.
The last question, you have visited Albania in last 27 years, twice a year. Have you an Albanian passport?
I do have an Albanian passport.
You have?
I do.
And the second, being in Albania twice a year, always in those kind of vacation, you said, have you really been for vacation in Albania with your family?
I have been in Albania for vacation with my family, but it's usually never a vacation because I have
You
so
have to
many
be
meetings.
back on
I have to
vacation.
work too hard.
I want to thank you for this interview.
I'm
tonight.
glad to be with you, Lenny.
Thank you very much.